You're listening to Funny Peculiar with Jeff Downs.
Welcome to another episode of Funny Peculiar. This week I speak to Mel Hudson, who's the manager at Pop Boutique in Manchester in Oldham Street. Now, Pop Boutique have a little bit of a tagline, and they're all about bringing life back to retro clothes from the 60s, 70s and 80s. They've got shops all over the north of England, Manchester, Liverpool, Leeds. They've also got in London as well, and they've got one in Sweden, in Gothenburg. So getting international, but as always with retro clothing, it is a global phenomenon. Everybody's into it. So I chat to Mel, and also a lot of performers go there. She was talking to buy outfits for particular acts. So there's the connection with Funny Peculiar, but again, it's a culture. It's something that I want to know more about, and Mel was great. She showed me around the shop. It wasn't just clothes, it was furniture as well. That's a big part of it. So you can go to their website, pop-boutique.com. They're also on Facebook. I'll give you all of the social media tags at the end. But without further ado, let's get into it, and let's meet Mel Hudson from Pop Boutique. Well, welcome to Funny Peculiar podcast. I'm here with Melanie Hudson. But you prefer Mel, so I'm going to call you throughout the interview. And we're at Pop Boutique.
Yep.
So hello.
Hi.
How are you doing? All right.
Good.
Loving the glasses. Yeah. Very nice.
Thanks very much.
And kind of befitting, and sort of we're in a vintage shop basically. Pop
Correct.
Boutique's been here for 27 years.
Thereabouts, yeah, roughly.
And we were talking earlier, and just briefly for people that have not been in here, or what sort of styles have you got here? What's the range?
I guess we've got something for everybody really, because we range really from 1950s all the way up to 1980s. And you know, we do a lot of menswear, which is not very common in a lot of vintage shops. It's mostly women's wear, so we do get a lot of menswear. But at the same time, a lot of girls come in and buy the menswear, because in Manchester, I think the kind of scene is a lot of the girls are a bit more indie, so they do tend to not get dressed up as much unless it's the evening. Obviously, day wear, a lot of girls will like to wear kind of boys' clothing, but we do a lot of a wide range of styles and eras.
So we're going back to 60s, 70s, that sort of range. As late as what qualifies as vintage? Does it have to be for a certain amount of years?
Yeah. I think it's 20 years.
Right. Okay.
When I mean, it could be 30. I mean, stuff like, say, stuff from the 1920s would be classed as antique now.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. And then stuff from, say, the 1950s and 60s would be classed as vintage.
Right, okay.
70s is on the cusp of being vintage. And then you've got your 80s and 90s, which is just classed as retro.
I see. Right, okay.
Yeah,
so if it's so, we wouldn't get anything. So noughties is still to happen if we
kind of we're still kind of getting little bits through from the noughties, but it's mostly 80s and 90s stuff that's still classed as retro now.
And it's not just, and looking round now, and I've got to remember to do my Radio 4 bit, and we're surrounded, we're in the basement level. There's on the side we've got wooden panelling. There's then the antelope's heads, stuff like that. But we've got all the clothes behind us. We've got hats, cushions, and homeware.
Yeah.
So I made that mistake of thinking it was
just clothing.
But it's not.
Yeah.
So what sort of homeware have we got here then?
All sorts. Yeah. It's.
Should we go and have a bit of a look?
Yeah.
Let's go and have a look. We're doing it. Let's have a look. So we've got quite a bit of.
We have an original American 1950s dining table and chairs, which are not easy to get now, because we used to get quite a lot of stuff coming over from the States, but because of the shipping costs, it's working out quite expensive nowadays.
Right. So okay. And this is a green, sort of lime green,
Formica
top. And so this is sort of stuff you see in I Love Lucy, that type of thing.
Absolutely,
that sort of,
any typical American home in the 50s would have these tables.
It's fantastic. And then the chairs, do they go with the actual table?
Yeah, they're sold as a set. I think, I'm not sure how much this did have a price on it.
And it's quite a 4-seater at the table, and it's one of those classic American movies. And then we've got the hostess trolleys from the. So these are
1960s, 70s plastic, bright orange chrome legs with wheels on it.
No, I remember this teapot from the 70s. So does that qualify me as vintage?
Kind of stainless steel teapot. Yeah, this is kind of vintage now. So it's kind of more. They call it mid-century modern.
Right.
Which is kind of anything from, say, 60s, 70s, 80s is kind of mid-century. Some stuff from the 50s is still mid-century, but anything before that will be known as kind of antique.
And
I would say. Yeah.
And it was so. Let me just. So we've just seen the homeware, and as I said, there's all the different. Furniture of the chairs. So again, a range from the 60s, 70s,
50s, 60s up to 70s and 80s.
And what about the painting? Are these originals as well?
Yeah, all original prints. These were kind of mass produced back in the day, but
and this was a popular. What the one?
Yeah, I think that one's called The Lovers.
Do you want to describe it?
It's a swan with its wings arched around on a tiled floor with the sea coming in, and the guy is stood naked on one of the swan's wings, and the girl's sat naked on the floor.
And who's that? Who would it? It's a mass print of the time.
I can't remember
so it's,
the name of the artist.
Who have we got? Bliss, something like that. 72.
Yeah, 72.
So it's easily qualifies for a Pink Floyd cover.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah.
And then you've got, and this is surrounded by the lights as well that we've got.
Yeah, and all the pottery, and then we've got the crying child up there, which was a really interesting story back in the day when they were produced. They were mass produced, but housewives had some kind of suspicion surrounding that picture because it was foretold that if you had one in your house would burn down. So they had mass burnings of these pictures, hence why there's not many of the crying children around anymore.
Because they felt they were jinxed if they were hanging.
Absolutely.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
so right, okay. So, and it's this picture of a angelic sort of child with a puppy.
Yeah.
And these were very popular until there was the myth about them, and they got
okay. Yeah. So a lot of them got destroyed, and now they've become quite rare and collectible.
It's very collectible. Yeah. And then we just have a quick look at. I love this globe as well. The classic. Well, it's a drinks cabinet.
Yeah,
this is the one that James Bond will have a drink from, or in Q's office. That's normally where.
Absolutely. I mean, these are timeless pieces. These have been going around since kind of like the 1800s in kind of. What would you call it, like a working man's club, like a gentleman's club. You'd walk in with all the Chesterfield leather sofas and they'd sit and drink the brandies and, you know, read the Times.
That's it. It's a gentleman's club.
Absolutely. Smoking the cigars.
And what years, do we know what years that? Or
this one's not particularly that old. Okay. I'd say this was probably 1980s.
Really? So
it's a reproduction of an old one. Yeah. They kept them classic because people liked them.
Yeah, fantastic. And we're here on it's a Saturday. How busy does it get? Is vintage pop? Do you get your busy days?
It's genuinely busy most of the time. Saturdays is our main trading day. It is very, very busy on Saturday because you do get people that come especially to shop on a Saturday in Manchester. They treat it as a day out, so you get more people through the door on a Saturday than you would in the week. And it's weird because you do get a lot of people you wouldn't normally get in the week, like a lot of families will come in, and when they walk down the stairs it's quite nice to see the looks on their faces when they gasp at how big and how much stuff we do have down here.
I didn't know it had it is huge down this.
Yeah.
And of course the different and this is a scene in itself, but you get a lot of different scenes, circuits of drag queens, students, fashionistas who you're saying they'll come in.
Absolutely,
so,
yeah.
You had a drag queen earlier who specialises in fur. He loves fur coats.
He loves fur coats. He loves his fur coats, and he comes in and he buys a lot of the sheepskin coats, but he also buys a lot of our blouses and nice kind of glittered skinny rib jumpers, and he's a super nice guy. He's a regular of mine, but we get a lot of drag queens that come in and buy, especially around Christmas time, because we do get a lot of kind of glitzy stuff at Christmas. A lot of the sequin dresses come through, so they come in especially for that.
I'll have to come in for that then.
Absolutely,
Size 18, remember that for me. But again, I think, and it's sizes as well.
It is.
Because were we smaller back in the 50s?
We were, to be honest with you, because the diets were different back then, because you were still rationing, you were still in the mindset of rationing from the Second World War. So people didn't have a lot of money, and Britain was still building itself back up again. The economy was in poor state, so people made do with what they had. So
they
a lot
said
of
that was the healthiest we'd been after post-war.
And we didn't have the diet that we have now, because it was just a very bland diet. We didn't have all these wonderful foods that we have now, like Indian and
all the different
Chinese and West Indian, and we didn't. You just didn't have that.
So the sizes were they were smaller.
They were smaller
on the waist, on the chest, but again, I think a lot of I'd say the 50s, 60s, very outlandish clothes.
Very outlandish. I mean, to be honest with you, a lot of the 50s dresses we get in were handmade, because back then people they made their own clothes, so everything was made specifically for that person's body. Yeah. They'd just buy the patterns and they'd buy the material, and they'd knock something up themselves.
And this is something we've kind of lost today, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so,
And that was quite fun. So do you get, are there dressmaking courses around today? Is there a resurgence of that, or not?
I think there is in certain areas, say like places like Charlton and Didsbury, and even places in Prestwich, maybe, in the smaller kind of rural communities. There's people that are getting on board with craft again now, and creating their own things. I mean, I wish that there was more of it about, and I'm sure there's places in Manchester that do seamstress courses and things like that. It would be nice for it to come back, for sure.
Absolutely. I never of course that was back then. Do it yourself was probably just emerging in the housing market, and of course clothes, people would make their own stuff.
Absolutely, which I think should happen now, especially now in the times that we're living in. I mean, we're living in very precarious times where people don't have a lot of money, the cost of living's gone up and nobody's wages have, and people are really struggling, and I'm not really on board with this throwaway fashion thing that people are into now, where they go to a shop, buy something, and it falls apart within 2 washes. I think people need to check out vintage stores and not be so squeamish about buying second-hand clothing, because there's nothing wrong with it. It's well made, it's lasted this long, and it's cheap, and people should do that. They should come to vintage shops, and they should start looking into making their own things.
Absolutely. And is there this attack, obviously, from the high street chains, your Primarks, the Miss Selfridge, all those sort of, especially with Primark, I mean, it's very, very cheap clothing.
Very cheap clothing, but cheaply made. This is the problem. You'll buy something cheap and you'll get a couple of wears out of it before it's, fit for the bin, which is a shame, because there's people in third world countries that are screaming out for clothing, and there's so much waste in England with all this throwaway fashion, and I think it's wrong. It shouldn't be like that.
And I think that's what they market on as well, that you can throw it away and come back to it. So and I suppose with a lot of vintage clothing, it lasts.
It does. It was made to last.
It was made to last as well. Fantastic. So let's go and have a little look at some more bits as well. So we'll come back. To we're in Pop Boutique today. Okay. So we've come over now to the lady section. This is a lot of the a range of decades of the vintages, and we're looking at, and we've got polo necks are quite popular at the moment.
Absolutely, polo necks always do well, because they're so versatile. You can wear them underneath the dress, You can wear them underneath a baggy jumper and layer it up, or you can wear it with a nice pair of capri pants and make it look quite mod and quite 60s.
And we've got a range of colours, black, navy through to stripes, the patterns.
Yeah, all colours. It's kind of like you can mix and match any of these colours with anything that we've got. Say like this really beautiful kind of pink, different shades of pink. That'd look great, say, underneath. We have over here one of our own branded dresses.
So this is something you do at Pop Boutique, which is you have your own brand, your own label as well.
We do our own label, which is basically taken from, inspired by vintage patterns and vintage cuts. So the dresses are quite traditional to a 60s style dress. The pattern is a King Charles check pattern, so it's quite a traditional pattern as well. So say like it's sleeveless with a nice little V-neck and buttons down the bottom, so you could wear it in summer on its own, but you could also wear this polo neck jumper underneath it, which brings out the nice little red stripe in the dress, because the dress is black and white checked with a tiny little dog tooth check on it, and then it's got a really nice red thin line running through the pattern. So that would
connect. So again, it's the retro style. Well, not retro. This is vintage, isn't it? Because this is the 60s, isn't it? But again, And do you find that you get a combination of people buying the label against the vintage, or?
Well, it's again, it's down to size.
Right.
I mean, the whole reason we wanted to do our own label and do it in a vintage style is so we can get sizes in for people. Okay. So we size from size 8 up to size 14.
Right. Okay.
So you know, if you don't necessarily get a vintage dress that fits you right, you could always look at our label and get something that would fit you right.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Because as we said earlier, back then vintage people were a lot smaller, so in a way that your label caters for the people that need the larger sizes, because we are larger in ourselves now.
We are, yeah.
That's wonderful. And we've got some fur coats here, which
we do
fake fur.
Fake fur. We don't deal with real fur anymore, because there's a bit of a stigma attached to real fur.
Yeah, obviously with that. So and there is a big vintage market. I take it for real fur, but is that shunned? Is that sort of?
It kind of is. It's kind of frowned upon nowadays, because people are very aware of where fur comes from, and I think if it's vintage fur, they're usually okay with it, but it's still, we don't want to take that chance of offending anybody.
Yeah, sure.
We choose not to deal with it.
Yeah. So no, it's a lovely array. Let's go and have a look at some of the guys' stuff, the jackets.
Yeah.
I remember from. I'll just pause it there. So I'm back here with Mel at Pop Boutique today, and we're in now the gentlemen's section. So these are now. I remember my days in. Big hand for the juggler. No, she's all right. Is that the restaurant?
That's the cafe upstairs.
Right, okay.
Nibble,
so they have to buy the kitchen. I see. It's
all connected.
It's all connected. No, she's safely got her crockery back there. So we're looking now from my days in Camden when I was. Now this is a massive guys' jackets, corduroy, suede, leather, sheepskin. So this is another big vintage seller.
I mean, we do well with these, especially in winter time, because they're really good coats. They were made for cold weather,
and these are made to last as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these are mostly American. A lot of the men's stuff that we do is American.
Really?
Yeah. So it comes like a lot of them are like from North America as well. So they're really made for the weather.
Yeah.
And they're made to last.
Yeah.
And they're good labels as well. So we'll get, say, like Pendleton and Woolrich and Carhartt and Dickies, and it's all kind of that. There's a big resurgent at the minute with American workwear for lads, especially really want to get on board with that old style kind of. It's borderline kind of railroad work, where you
very Americana.
Very Americana,
That's always kind of been there as well.
It kind of has, but it seems to be becoming more and more popular now. Because like Levi's and like Lee Storm Riders and things like that are kind of getting remade. In a modern way.
Sure.
But made to look like the old American
old way.
workwear,
And we've
because a lot of the original stuff is very, very expensive now. Yeah,
Yes.
especially denim.
Right,
Yeah.
Levi's, of course, they can go for hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands.
Yeah,
I take it.
depending on what make it is. Say, like, you get your big, what they call the big E or capital E jacket, which can, you know,
How much can that go?
some of them can, depending on the age, can fetch up to £5,000.
Ooh,
Yeah,
that's
it's
a
big
lot.
money. It's
Wow.
big money in American workwear.
And jeans, Levi's, what, an original pair of, how much you think that could be?
I mean, the average pair of jeans that we have in here, we do this just the normal kind of 501s we sell for £20.
Right,
but
okay.
again, it depends on the age,
Yeah.
the cut.
Yeah.
They can fetch up to, like, you know, £500
Wow,
plus. You
wow,
know,
okay,
yeah.
But shorter men back then, I'd never get
Yeah.
a pair, not a 36 inside leg.
No,
It's a very,
it's not often we get long legs in
I know,
it.
it was not short, very short back then. So it was like
Yeah.
it was obviously to do with the gravity or something. Now we've
Yeah.
got, and I've just seen, this is a wonderful jacket, very midnight cowboy, John
Yeah.
Voight, the tassel cowboy, which I love. That's a wonderful jacket.
Yeah, and like
how much is that one? Just that is £50.
Yeah,
so that's
yeah.
pretty good price.
And it's quite heavy suede as
That's
well.
a
It's got some weight to it.
some
So,
weight. Oh,
yeah.
that is heavy.
Yeah,
That is
yeah.
And then we've got the lumberjack jackets.
These are what we call the CPOs.
And what's
So
that?
CPO again is like a workwear brand. So
Right, okay.
these were kind of popular in the 60s.
Yeah.
So that, like, you've got your LL Bean label,
Yeah.
and then your brothers. Five Brothers is a really good label to look
Okay.
out for. Again, Woolrich.
It's all-
So yeah, there's a lot of really good labels on these. I mean, this is just your classic kind of 1960s
Right, yeah, that is.
wool CPO jacket.
Yeah, they're very. And you've got, and also and Commander as well, the army, the military.
Yeah, we get a few army.
I've got my
jackets,
Rod
yeah,
Shepherd
yeah.
character, which I do, which is in a military. These are really, and these are still popular. The military stuff.
Kind of. They seem to have gone off a little bit now. I mean, you do still get people buying them, but I remember, like, in the early 90s that military wear was massive.
Yeah.
You know, everyone had a military jacket or a mod parka,
Yeah.
and even back to the kind of military trousers with the pockets on the side of the legs that everyone was wearing back then.
Like
Yeah.
battle fatigue. Is
Absolutely,
it?
yeah.
I wonder
But
what
it seems to have gone off a little bit now. It's quite a niche market for military wear now.
Sure.
Yeah, because we used to do racks and racks of it, and
And
now
it's
we're down to kind of just one or two
So-
bays. Yeah,
So again, cycles are different things.
Yeah.
And we buy the mod shirts now.
Yeah,
So this is
these are all
mixture
kind
of your own label and vintage stuff as well.
Yeah. So we've got, these are all like the check shirts
check- and ranges
and
of
cowboy
colours.
shirts and
Right.
and 60s and 70s shirts, and then going into, say, our own label.
Right.
Like, say, again, to do with sizes, and because we size from small up to extra large, but they're all cut from kind of like traditional patterns.
Right.
So you'll get like a really nice fitted shirt, button down collar, kind of nice, heavily patterned on
Right.
it, and which a lot of the kind of people that are into the 60s fashion and the mod fashion
Yeah.
tend to go for, and these do really well for us.
Right, and
We sell so many of these shirts. They're well made. They're 100% cotton. They wash well.
And it's part of that look as well.
It
which
is.
which
It's
what-
in keeping with what we do here. We like to, you know, keep involved with the look of the shop and the
Yeah.
look of the vintage clothing, which is what we deal with.
Yeah.
So
Fantastic,
you know, and you get-
wonderful. It's just an array of. We're just surrounded by constant every decade, and then we've got a drinks cabinet as well, which is that's
Yeah.
60s. I take it.
I
Or
think
was
it's
it
earlier that
earlier
one.
than that one?
I mean, to me, it looks a bit more kind of decor.
Yeah.
So I'd probably say that was 1950s.
And the Wurlitzer, and it's just all
Yeah.
around hats. It's just an array. And then, so you've been here 20 years now. You've been working
Yeah,
here,
yeah,
but
I
you used
think
to DJ as well when you first kind of on the scene.
Back in the kind of mid 90s up to kind of noughties. I
Yeah.
DJ'd for around 10 years on the
Right.
club scene in Manchester.
Yeah.
Back then there were more clubs than you knew what to do with,
with.
more nights.
Not just the hacienda, which
not
was,
just the
there was
hacienda.
a lot more.
There was
smaller.
loads of really good underground nights going on in Manchester
Yeah.
back then. I mean, you had the massive like funk, soul and hip hop
Yeah.
scene going on, as well as your alternative nights like There's a guy called Andy Votel that runs a record label called Finders Keepers, and he used to run a label called Twisted Nerve, which put out like local bands from Manchester, which was really alternative music and electronic music and folk music. So we used to put some great nights on, like there was Electric Mode and B Music, and then you had Fat City Records, which had their own record label called Grand Central that used to put out some amazing nights like Friends and Family. And then you had like nights called Eyes Down, which a guy called Kelvin Brown used to do, and it was all kind of funk, soul, hip-hop based. And then you had your mod nights as well, which was like Club Carnaby Street.
There was a mod scene up in Manchester.
There was a huge mod scene.
I think London always seems to be synonymous with mods, but not. It's other. Of course, it would go through other cities. So.
There was a big mod scene in Manchester back in the mid-90s. They had a night called Club Carnaby Street, which was fantastic. And that was run by a guy called Martin the Mod, who was like a veteran of the Northern Quarter back then as well. So
they just had every year mod bikes come into the city. They pass me in Swinton, Salford. They come down, and they're all on their Vespas and Lambrettas. So that might be there's still
an underground movement round, but no, it's not as much. There's not as many of them around as there used to be, from what I remember anyway.
Sure.
I think maybe because I was kind of, I had my toe in that kind of scene as well, so I saw, I could see it more. And working here, you saw the people coming in shopping, but it doesn't seem to be around as much anymore. But there was fantastic nights going around back then. I'd DJ all over the place. I used to DJ for a night called All That Jazz, which was like a jazz funk night. That was held at the Dance House Theatre, which is no longer there anymore. So I used to do nights at the Roadhouse, which is no longer there anymore. So a lot of the good venues have closed down now. So, and a lot of live venues have closed down. So there's not as many of them around anymore. And I used to DJ for Clint Boone at Disco Rescue down at South. So I used to do that night regularly. So I was kind of in with the kind of indie scene as well, like reminiscing on the good old days of Manchester.
It was the place to be. So and it seems like this is the place to be as well. So,
I like to think so.
And it's been great coming here today. Mel, thank you very much.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Thanks for being on Funny Peculiar. And we will. Now, my last question, I ask this to everybody: who would you recommend that I speak to next for a podcast? It can be anybody you want to choose. Perhaps another clothing shop, another scene, or who do you think?
Trying to think. Night and Day would be a good one. Interview.
Right, okay. And they've been there for a while.
They've been there for perhaps longer than us, and they have an interesting story to tell because so many major big bands have come through there.
I'll do that. I'll get in touch. Yeah. Wonderful, lovely. Mel, thank you very much again.
Thank you.
Lovely.
Thanks
very
much.
much. Brilliant. Right, I'm off to buy some cowboy boots.
You've been listening to Funny Peculiar. Tune in next week. More great guests.
So a big thank you again to Mel Hudson from Pop Boutique. It was a great day just looking at all the different clothes, all the variety of furniture. Great episode. Again, you can follow Pop Boutique. They've got a Facebook page and they've got a website, pop-boutique.com. Mel also has an Instagram account, which is Woman I Mel. If that's all one phrase, you'll be able to get it on there. Loads of great photos. And thanks for listening. Thanks for downloading. And please leave any comments on the website. Let me know what your favourite show is. If you've got any suggestions for future guests you'd like me to interview, anything like that, get your comments on there. That would be great. More great guests to come. Can't wait on Funny Peculiar.